Welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Welcome back to the show right here on NAC TV. Eoin Devereux, news reporter with the Banner Press, welcoming you once again. And joined this week by Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you here this week.
Good to be here. I think it's been a while since I was last on the show.
That's right. We decided the last couple weeks of Kira, we'd make her do it for a while, but now Kira has moved on to greener pastures, so we wish her well on that. So, although she'll still probably be watching the show from time to time, critiquing what we're doing, seeing what we're doing wrong. So
pointing, laughing, saying, "Ha, nerds."
Well, we're just still going to forge ahead, though. We're going to try and get as much information out to you as we can. And this week, obviously no exception, because we got another two-section newspaper this week. It's focused in our B section about recognizing our local firefighters. We're going to get to that in a little bit. We're going to focus first on our front page and the fact that every child matters. And that is the creed for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, an event that was brought forward to recognize, obviously, the severe, shameful tragedies of residential schools that Canada has to deal with and has to acknowledge. And this year, second year where there has been a larger production in terms of that recognition, and Neepawa was a part of it as well. Representation from Aboriginal communities surrounding Neepawa came here and shared their heritage with us. Neepawa, historically, even though we do come from the Cree, a land of plenty, I believe, not a large indigenous population actually live in the community proper. So it's wonderful that they were able to bring their knowledge and experience and their heritage here so that we can learn from it. It's very important that the youngsters from Neepawa Middle School and NACI participated in it. And that's exactly what they did. Kira Patterson and Destiny Mackey went down to the flats where it was held on September 29th, and they took a bunch of pictures and got a lot of information on the festivities, about the celebrations, and about the knowledge that was shared through individuals, elders. It was really, I thought, Casper, as I read through it, it was great to be able to see that type of sharing and the way it was told visually through not just the front page, but also through our other page, A9, where there's a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. Like looking at the pictures on there as we were putting it all together there, looking through the pages. Just very wonderful photos taken by Destiny there. All the photos on A9 are hers. Just wonderful storytelling there, the different aspects of the culture that was being shared, including food. They had a wonderful bannock there, so there's that on that page, as well as the dancing with the full traditional regalia. Very, very beautiful, and just sharing this is a very important thing for culture and history. So it's awesome to have these individuals come down for that day and share that with us.
That's right. It was representation from multiple First Nations. The Ebb and Flow First Nation participated, Sioux Valley First Nation, and Weyway-Sakapo First Nation all sent representation down to share some of the details and some of the information. So very appreciative of that. Destiny Mackey is the one who wrote the story, shared some of the information, and that story is continued on from page 1 to page A9. So it's one of those things of very pleased. Sometimes we're very happy to be able to share this type of knowledge with our readership, and this is one of those really good examples of it. One other thing as well, we don't got it on the list, but I'll just mention it in passing. If you look on the back of the paper, page A20, as well, the Neepawa Titans hockey team also recognized and acknowledged the Day of Reconciliation by having the Grand Chief for Sandy Bay First Nation, Trevor Prince, come down and drop the ceremonial puck. The Titans were playing against the OCM Blizzard over the weekend, 3 games in 3 nights. Hopefully, if you weren't able to be there live and watch the games, you've seen them right here on NAC TV. Obviously, NAC TV rebroadcasts all the Neepawa Titans home games. Definitely check the TV listings to be able to find the time where you can find those games. And hopefully you will. So support not just the Banner Press, but support NAC TV. All right, so let's shift over to a localized story. I didn't know, honestly, Casper, I didn't know the history of the building myself until I had to do the research for it. I talked to Ken Waddell about it. He was able to fill in some of the blanks. But let's start at the start. That's always the best place to start. Most likely, as you were walking down Hamilton Street on Monday, you saw something slightly unusual right next to the Roxy Theatre. The building over there, 287, if I remember correctly, Hamilton, known to many long-standing locals as the Kerr Building. It was boarded up completely, and there were little signage up in front there. And the reason it was done that way is because Manitoba Health has essentially closed that building to all occupancy in any capacity. Closed until further notice. That's the headline for the story that you can find on page 2 of this week's edition of the Banner Press. They have cited numerous fire safety and just sort of code concerns with those buildings. So there were individuals that were living on the second floor still up until about October 1st. They have been asked to move, and they all have. Representative with Manitoba Health went in there on Monday to ensure that there was no one in there. And there was no one in there anymore. Essentially, these buildings cannot be inhabited in any way, shape, or form until they are brought up to code. And that brings up something interesting, Casper. I wonder what will happen next. I reached out to several representatives with Manitoba Health, the town. They told me what they could. Wasn't able to get in touch with ownership on that, so I don't know what's happening on that end of the spectrum. So it's going to be interesting to see how long this plays out.
Yeah, because I know just hearing about it in the office here and there before this ended up happening. I know the building has been in rough shape for quite some time, and then of course the downstairs hasn't been occupied for quite some time either. And just hearing about the condition it's in, it's kind of sad. The block there has had quite the history in the town here, and you actually do have a very nice archive photo on page A2 to kind of show how it looked back in the day. And even though that storefront has changed obviously over the years, you still can see a lot of how it looked back then. So the history holds up, and it's just kind of, it's a little sad to see that deteriorated in such a way. And yeah, I really don't know where this is going to go from here, because obviously, as you said, haven't been able to contact ownership, so we don't know what's going to happen there, because obviously they're not around. So
yeah, it's well known, some of the history, and again, there's hearsay that runs through the coffee shops in any little community. Neepawa is no exception, so there's talk about how over the years it's been in terrible shape. There have been businesses that were in there in the past, antiques stores, boxing gyms, other types of things. I believe real estate office was in there at a time as well. And just over the years, you just kept hearing those little complaints about water or the walls or moisture or mildew or things along those lines. And that was 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right.
So I can't even imagine wandering through there right now, since there have been no businesses on the main floor for about, I'd say, a good 3 years, I think.
Roughly, I think so, yeah. I'm almost afraid to imagine like how bad it actually is in there. Because obviously it's not condemned, that's not the wording that they used, but for that sort of notice to be put up there, it's definitely in rough shape, and you don't want to be in there without some sort of protective equipment, I imagine. But yeah, it's just too bad that it's been let go to that degree.
And it's interesting. I'm just going to read you a small snippet from the information I got from Manitoba Health, and I made sure to use their wording precisely on this. This has been something that's been going on since July of this year. Number of issues identified at 287 Hamilton Street in Neepawa. Subsequently, because of multiple health and safety hazards having not been addressed in a timely manner, a health hazard order has been issued for the premises. Those are very, very stringent, very specific words here. Multiple health, safety, hazards. It's just unbelievable. They talk about fire, electrical, building code requirements in need of being brought up to code. That sounds awful. And the worst part about it as well, Casper, is up until October 1st, people were still living up on the second floor.
Yeah, and that kind of baffles me too. Like, with it being in whatever sort of shape it is in, how the heck, pardon me, how the heck were, tenants dealing with whatever conditions they were dealing with in their living spaces? Like, I don't know if it was a little bit better perhaps on the upstairs or what, and maybe it was just mostly like, coming down to the downstairs, but it just blows my mind that people are still living in there and being able to live in there. I mean, I'm glad they had a place to stay, but like, what's sort of the,
And again, don't get me wrong. I don't put the blame or the onus on the tenants whatsoever.
Exactly, yeah.
They have to find a place to live. Neepawa it is getting better in terms of vacancies and opportunities for people and families to find proper accommodations, but there was a time for several years where the amount of people coming into the community and the amount of space we had, it didn't jive. It wasn't equal. Even today. I mean, we just got to look a couple weeks ago, the fire that occurred, that we reported on. Of course, you'll have to look into a back issue of the Banner Press to see all that coverage we had on there. There were about, if I remember right, 8 or 10 people that were living in the house.
Right.
Now, it was a large house, don't get me wrong. But again, I mean, it's still a fair number of people in those quarters. And it's very concerning that seems to be the reality in Neepawa still. There's been work put in, though, and there is new housing coming, and there is new housing available. So hopefully that's going to be able to make a change in that aspect. But going back to the Kerr building, we were just talking just before we went on the air, how terrible would it be? Because from the outside aesthetic, it's still, the second floor especially, the brick and all that, it's still beautiful. It's great. But just what could the inside be?
Yeah, and like obviously in a situation like that, you're renting this space, you don't own it, so obviously it goes to the landlord to do whatever repairs. You as a tenant, obviously you try and reach out to them so that can be dealt with, but ultimately it's out of your hands. There's not much you can do as a renter, so
that's right.
It creates an interesting situation.
And an interesting situation moving forward, because over the years, if it's deteriorated to the degree that Manitoba Health says it has, how can it be salvaged? How can it be saved? Do you just wipe the whole thing out and start clean? Or do you try and preserve that little bit of local community heritage? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And it's going to be a shame, honestly, if a year from now, or 2 years from now, or God help us, 3 to 4 to 5 years from now, it's still boarded up and it's still vacant. Because I've lived in communities, I've lived in cities where the downtown is desolate, where the downtown is dead. And I don't want that to happen in Neepawa. It is happening to a degree because of all the traffic along the highway. That's just the reality of it. We're on a major highway, the Yellowhead. So a lot of the businesses are starting to shift over towards the highway where there is more traffic. And I don't blame them for that. That's just smart business sense. But it's going to be a shame if we lose the core of Neepawa and it just becomes a ghost town. I've seen it in Dauphin. Oh God, I've seen it in Portage. Anybody drive downtown in Portage, it is depressing. It is legitimately depressing. Brandon, I moved to Brandon, Casper in '91. Downtown was beautiful. They'd just redone all the streets, all the brick, all the sidewalks and all that, and it was unbelievable. Every store had businesses in it. Every apartment complex had people in it. It was thriving. And to see it now where there's so many empty shops, the sidewalks are just all beat the hell, pardon my language, but that's the truth. They're just beat down completely. It's a shame, and I'd hate to see that happen here.
Yeah, especially because, I know we are a smaller community, but even then, and we are growing, obviously we've grown a lot in my time being here. It's a very vibrant community, I feel, and just great to walk around in or drive around in. Yeah, you can see all these unique different shops here. We're certainly getting a lot more culture in too, so we get to see that in the downtown area. So I'd like to see that grow more as opposed to, even though, yeah, the businesses along the highway make sense from, that aspect, because it's more people passing through on the highway as opposed to turning in. It'd be nice to see the downtown section grow more as opposed to shift away.
That's right. We're going to stay on this. Hopefully there will be positive updates in future editions of the Neepawa Banner Press. But if you want to get the full details, you can find it on page A2 of this week's edition of the paper. Let's shift over to the Rural Outlook page. I had an opportunity to sit with Councillor Murray Parrott for the town of Neepawa. Himself and Mayor Blake McCutcheon had a chance to go to Pooresville Prairie recently and take part in a rural health summit. Representation from the health industry, from businesses throughout Manitoba, and from several communities. A large number of rural and northern communities gathered in Portage for this summit to talk about the issues that they all deal with when it comes to bringing in physicians and keeping physicians. Murray was very thorough in sort of walking me through the process, the things he learned about it from the day, and the things that Neepawa needs to be a little proud of. He said in terms of what they've been able to do with the Beautiful Plains Community Medical Clinic is a good example of that. It's a thriving, ever-expanding, ever-improving facility that physicians and locals have bought into, literally and figuratively, and have supported our medical. Like, there's so many other larger communities that look at what Neepawa has done and say, wow, okay. And we need to, and they've learned from it. But at the same time, Murray also talked Casper about the fact that we need to learn some things as well. Because even though we're in a decent position, we can't stay stagnant. You've always got to be moving forward. If you're not, you're stagnating. And that's for so many different facets of life, and including this, with so many communities competing against each other.
Right, yeah. And obviously, just in terms of technology, even as one thing, that's something that's developing all the time. So being able to keep up with that at our various medical clinics or hospital, whatever it is definitely a crucial factor for healthcare in the area or in town here. And then just whatever other factors that we need to consider to keep improving our facilities and being able to retain our doctors, because Neepawa does have some things going for it, speaking to the new doctor last week or a couple weeks ago.
That's right, last week's edition of the Banner and Press.
Yeah, she was talking about a few of the different things that drew her here, and one of the things that worked for us that isn't necessarily about the facilities itself, but is definitely a draw, is that it's close to other cities, so that takes off travel time if you need to get somewhere to go to the city and do something. So
something else that I would imagine, Casper, is a good drawing card for the town of Neepawa is its artistic endeavors.
Yes.
And that segues quite nicely into your story. You were able to talk about a new exhibit that has opened up at Arts Forward.
Yeah, it was a very interesting exhibit, or I should say it is still currently there and will be there for the month of October. I just need to get the right page here. What did I put that on? I think I wrote down the wrong page. Oh, page 12. That's where it is, page A12, everyone. You won't have to flounder like I just did. But yeah, very good exhibit put on by Jonah Mitten and Katie Martin there, two local people, one from Minnedosa, and I can't remember Katie off the top of my head there. But Jonah is a photographer and Katie is a artist, paints a lot, and is actually the art teacher at the high school here in Neepawa. They collaborated for this exhibit called Rise, and it highlights people within the community or close to Neepawa who have, sort of had their own struggles in life, because, everyone, they have things that come up, and it's difficult. We all go through our own rough spots. But just highlighting those people, what they've been through, and their stories of how they've sort of come back from that or are continuing to work on that and helping out other people, whether it be creating something or supporting different causes, all that sort of thing. So there's portraits of each of those individuals there that Katie has painted from Jonah's photos, and along with their stories too. So very interesting exhibit. Be sure to check that out and read the details in the paper too.
That's right. It's great. It visually, it was very interesting because we weren't able to put every single picture in there, but I went through some of them that you had there, and it tells a story. That's what the point of art is, to sort of tell that story within you that you see from those, and like, again, the pictures as well. That's a great part of it as well. You can see the paintings, versions of it, and in just a little alcove, I believe, right, is where the pictures of it is?
Yeah, so with the portraits of the individuals themselves, there's the paintings, and then like right above the stories that are printed out and beside the painting, it's just like right
next,
above.
Okay.
But there is an alcove there with Jonah's individual photography there, and it's just marvelous work.
It's interesting to be able to see the interpretation of it as well. I think you should take the time out and head down to Arts Forward. I forget off the top of my head. I'm going to have to look that up as well, just to sort of see when that actually is completed.
I believe it's until the end of the month, but if for some reason it can't be found anywhere, the details are, of course, on Arts Forward's website. Or, give a call to Yvonne Sisley. She's happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Again, you can find that on page A12 of this week's paper. All right, we're running a little low on time, so we're going to skip through a bunch of these relatively quickly. Kira Patterson, one of her last stories, actually it probably is her last story that she had for us,
I believe
is a positive one because she was able to do an update on the Terry Fox run, and it was a record-breaking year this year. Tremendous. Very glad to hear that 115 participants this year for the Terry Fox run, and over $10,000 raised. That's well above what the previous benchmark was. I think the previous benchmark was around 9,400. So to hit that 10,000 plus, wonderful. Very glad to be able to hear that. And we're going to coincide with that with a story that was submitted to us. Very pleased. We try to get out to all the events we can, but we can't all the time. So we thank the representation for the Walk With Us campaign, for the Manitoba Down Syndrome Society, for them sending the information our way about their event that occurred on the 25th of September. They were able to raise $3,500 for the cause. So I really like it when the community steps up like this. Over $10,000 for the Terry Fox run, $3,500 for the Down Syndrome Society. Like Neepawa, when they need to, they really step up.
Absolutely, yeah. Very good turnouts at both of these events, and good financial support, and just the people behind this, putting this stuff together too. Because the Neepawa Walk, as people might remember from the previous story that I did, previewing it, this is the only local walk in Manitoba. So, very, very good effort by a local family.
That's right. All right, let's go over from, there's so many other things in the A section we could talk about. We could talk about the Titans 3 games and 3 nights against the OCM Blizzard. We could talk about the Neepawa Elks and their generous donations. There's just so much that in a half hour we just can't touch on every single one. That's why you need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press and see for yourself. You can either pick up a physical copy anywhere in Neepawa and many different surrounding communities, but if you're not in the area proper, you can find it online at mywestman.ca. We always put a PDF version on there or a link to issues.com where you can see it and read it for yourself. We always appreciate you supporting us any way that you can in this endeavor. And we got one other thing as well. The B section, every week seems to be an extra section as of late. God, we're just been put to work, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. And Diane even more so. She's been really getting to work on all of the ads and all that sort of stuff that we need for these special sections to work out.
Oh yeah, no, it was great though that Warner was able to get that together as well. Destiny and Kira Patterson put a lot of work into it. It is the Fire Safety, Fire Prevention Week feature, recognizing our local firefighters. 8 pages of pictures of firefighters from not just Neepawa, but all over communities such as Kelwood, Minnedosa, Plumas, St. Rose. We try to be the regional paper. I keep harping on this each and every week, but it's because it's true. We want to be the regional paper. We don't want to be just Neepawa centric. We try and do the best we can to reach every community. So we appreciate when you support us in that way. And this is a way that we try and support you in that. Not just the pictures though as well. We've also got a couple stories, one of which I wrote. I decided to go check in with representation. It was Mitch Hutton, the business manager with Gillen Schmall Agencies here in Neepawa, took a few moments of his day and sat down with me and talked to me about how important it is to have renter's insurance. And I'll just give away one thing, Casper, and I got to admit, at my age, I really should have known this already, and especially in my profession, because I've always been taught by bosses, be ready to move at a moment's notice. So renter's insurance isn't just covering your stuff, it's if you have an accident in the home, you're covered for it. If you're in an apartment complex and you let the water run, and that's your fault, you could have to pay for the whole thing. I don't have $300,000-$400,000 in the bank, despite the fancy ties. I don't, Casper, believe it or not.
Yeah, so you really don't want to be, having to shill out of pocket for anything like that. So definitely be sure you have renter's insurance, not just for your own belongings, but in the case that an accident may happen, because you never know what may happen. Sure, you're always careful, but it's good to have that little extra bit of insurance. And
it's only a couple $100 a year. It's starting to sound like a commercial, but it's the truth with what happened recently with the house fire. I think it's very important that we all learn those lessons, and I know I most certainly did. So I'll be making sure to have that all paid up and looked after. So we're running out on time right now, but we thank you as always for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us. And again, Casper, thank you for walking us through everything you've been doing this weekend or this week. It's always appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me here.
All right. Now, if you have any story suggestions whatsoever, we'd love to hear from them. I got a list of like 16 on my to-do list, but 1 or 2 extra never hurt anyone. But we would love any and all story suggestions, and you can get them to us via either email at news@neepawabanner.com or at 204-476-3401. If there are any sports-specific related stories, you can contact me at sports@neepawabanner.com. That's sort of the season now. All the winter sports are going to start kicking into high gear, so we'll always appreciate if there's anything you think we should be covering, that you help us out with that. It is always appreciated. So with that, again, Casper, thank you very much. And to you, thank you very much for tuning in to NAC TV each and every week, and to picking up the Neepawa Banner and Press every week. And I hope that you have a good week.